And I lied on the last video. There's a lot more that I did want to do. And so we're going to need to go ahead and continue working on this just a little bit more as a group. And I'm going to be doing some more things that we can do in here and just keep building upon the program so that it's just, it's a nice finished product. So first thing we're going to do is now that we've generated that HTML file, right? We've generated the HTML, and that also, when we generated it, we're actually saving it as well, right? And we know it's HTML.html, which is important. We're going to need to keep that. And what we're going to do now, actually, let's go back to that. I'm sorry. Let's make the file name let's do the root path. Whoop, I'm sorry. os.path.join, the root path, and html.html, because we're saving it in the root. Okay, and we're going to make that a file name so that it's not hard coded at that point. It's now going to be the full path, and we're going to take this and we're going to put it here. Okay. And like I said, because it's all part of the same file, this is going to be accessible from inside this function. You don't have to do the global thing. So this file being here, so now we've got this one spot, kind of like a config area, real quick as to what things are saved as and whatnot. You can just change a few things here, and you don't have to worry about. Matter of fact, we can move this path up to here as well. Okay, and like I said, basically at this point now we have a config section. So like we can config these two things, and all the files are created correctly. One thing to update everyone on, I did add here some more lines. So we have a total of 8 students now. Fred, Turtle, Bob, and Peter have all decided to hop into our class, and they all have new ID numbers and everything else. So the reason I did that is this cache here should expand, right? I want to make sure that actually works. It should, right? Should, could, would, possibly. These are all words just to weasel out of being committal. And also we wanted to go ahead and open up that browser. So that's one thing I wanted to show everybody. It's incredibly simple. You can just import web browser. It's wonderful. And now you can just simply say webbrowser.open, and then you give it a URL, which is wonderful, right? So HTML URL is going to be this HTML file name, right? But you can't just open up a file like that. You actually have to wrap it in some stuff. So file : and then here format our HTML file name, and then our HTML file URL. Okay, we're going to close out my browser. It is completely gone. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run it, and it should, look at that, downloading our barcodes, and it opened up my browser over here, and there's everything. It went ahead and opened it for me, which is awesome. So now we have exactly what the client asked for, and that's all well and good. But what we're going to continue on, now that we've finished our program, we're not 100% finished. We're close. And as far as things that we have set out to do, we've done it, right? But we're going to clean up our code. It's working. It's working great. However, we're going to add some coolness, right? I want to add this coolness, and I want to introduce you on how to make modules and classes. Okay, so this is all really great because these files all work because of the fact that it's all in one file. Okay, so the variables are global and everything's great and wonderful, but we want to segment our code a little more. So I'm going to teach you guys how to make your own classes, And think of a class as a self-contained program, and it's an object really. But and you can read this a little more. Read into this. I suggest you go read it because I could spend probably a week explaining classes inside Python. But the short and dirty version of it is a class is a blueprint for an object. That object can hold things such as variables. It can also hold functions, which will not be called functions anymore. They're actually called methods. Once they're in a class, they're considered a method. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a new new directory up here, and that directory is going to be called classes. How original. And in there, we're going to make a new file, new Python file, and this is going to be called console.py. And for those of you who've ran my programs, you probably know what we're going to be starting to make. We're going to start to make a pretty thing, okay? And I'm going to get myself a soda. Okay, I have a nice frosty beverage. So what we're going to do in this console is we're going to be importing a few things. We're going to import the date time module, okay, because we want to add dates and times to what we output. And this console, the whole purpose of the console is literally to make things pretty, okay. And so to do that, I want to add color down here, right? And I want to make a nice pretty splash start screen, and we'll make some cool stuff because output of the HTML is great, but I want to make this look better too. Okay, and it also is going to add some more knowledge into your bucket. So first off, we're going to need to install a few things from pip. Pip install and Colorama is one of them. Okay, and then pip install term color, and that should do as well. And also let's do colored. There we go. So now we're going to say pip freeze, and we're going to do requirements.text again, so that we can look here and we can see that now we have colored, colorama, and term color in there. And this HTML file, well, we're going to blow up that there. Okay. So now we're going to let's do a try block here, and then from colored ama, we're going to import the init, okay, and then from term color, we're going to import colored. And the reason we're doing this in a try block is we can now add an exception, module not found error as E, okay, and we can say print import error unable to load module, and format e.name. Sorry, we don't need that first E. So the e.name is something you haven't seen before. And that's basically the error object has multiple things in it. And what we're doing here is we're then going to pass, because if it doesn't work, that's okay. We can continue. Actually, no, we can't, because we're going to have all kinds of errors if we do that. So let's import a new one called sys. Okay, and sys is just system. So sys.exit, and we're going to give it a status code of 1. Whenever a program exits, they normally will exit with a status code. A status code of 0 means that everything ran fine. A status code of 1 or greater than 0 means there was an error. Some programs have a lot of status codes. Some just say always 1. It just depends on whatever you feel like at that moment. So we've imported, and the reason we're doing this is if somebody runs our program and forgets to do that requirements.text, bad things happen. And you know what? We need to also copy this. Okay, we're going to copy this. We're going to go back into our main. And remember, this import request, that's one that we have pulled from the internet. So we also need to import sys up here. So there. All right, so we have sys imported, and it will exit out if it's unable to do the request, right? Because we kind of need that. Otherwise, we can't download our stuff. So if somebody runs this without installing the requirements.txt file, it's going to just exit. But it will at least print, hey, unable to load, right? And you could put an error status also. You could do another line and say, please, you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Print, please run pip install -r requirements.txt in your virtual environment. There. And we'll copy that and paste it into the other one. And this is one of the few times that we will copy and paste because they are two separate files. It just makes sense to have it in both places. So now what we're going to do is we're going to define a class. Okay, so we know that these things have loaded. Let's go ahead and do our class. Now classes do not take arguments, so there is no need here. They kind of do take arguments. It's complicated. I'm not going to explain it, but later on we will probably use it. But for right now, we're going to do that. Now we're going to use a special function, or a special method, I should say, called init. Okay, and classes introduce the concept of self. All self means in the short version is self simply means I'm talking about my own object. Okay, so we're gonna and this is a special one here. This init basically means when the class loads, do these things. Okay, so we can say print loaded console module, right? And you know what? Let's do that temporarily. We're gonna remove it probably, but for right now we'll leave it just so we can see how to import. Okay, so we're gonna go back to our main, and now we're going to say import classes dot console. Okay, and as console. Okay, so now what we're doing is this classes dot just simply means classes, right? And then the file of console. So if you had another file called bobo.py, it would be classes.bobo. And then as console is just simply saying console. Okay, you could rename a class. We don't have to in this case. Let's go ahead and create down here. Very first thing, right after all these things, we're going to say console equals console. Why is that not liking it? I'm going to just teach you a trick. Let's just teach you a trick. It's much easier. Down here, we're going to say console equals console. Okay, and a new one. And notice this has got the thing because we're creating this class, so it is a kind of a function thing, and you have to put a new enter at the end, or else it'll complain. So this console here, we can actually say from classes.console import console. So this console refers to this one. Now, the good news is that because we're importing it, it'll be used throughout the whole thing. Okay. And if you look here, we already have console created, so we don't need to do it this way. All right. So from console, import the console object, which is here. Now, the cool thing is, if you were to use this console file in multiple files, and you continually use the same console object, because these are stateless, meaning they don't have any, they don't keep any data that's important, it'll just reuse the same object, which will save memory. So that's why I just figured I'd show you the correct way of doing it instead of another way. Well, it's a tricky, hacky way. It saves some memory. It's just something I do. Nobody's called me out on it yet, so it is what it is. So now, the cool thing is when we run this file, let's clear the bottom so we can see what's going on. You'll see it says loaded that console module. And then it did things. Right? So now it's loaded that console module. Now what we can do is we can now add some more stuff to this. Okay? We're going to say define a new function called doPrint. Okay? Message. Whoops. And you see how it says self right after that? It's because it's trying to constantly talk to itself. And we don't need to do that. So for now, and I'll explain it later, just say static method at the top there, and we won't need self. Basically, static method means that we don't need the self object. Okay, you could do self, right, and then say message and color. And if you do that, it's basically going to just print out, well, it's going to ignore self, but we're going to leave that back in and get rid of this because we don't need to look at itself for this. So all we're doing here is we're just going to say print colored and then message and color. And you're probably going, well, wait a minute, where's this coming from? So color is color and message is message. Okay. And all we're doing is wrapping that inside the colored object from here, which is imported from term color, and then colorama is what we're gonna have to init here. So init there, and so this initializes colorama, and that allows, basically we're going to be using these things to create some pretty colors inside our terminal. Okay, and so we're going to say define, let's do magenta, which I just love saying that word, it's fun. Okay, we're going to be using self in this case, and the message, whatever that might be, self.doPrint. Okay, so now you see where the self is coming in. We're saying do print from your own self. Okay, so that self is important. If you just said do print, it wouldn't work because it doesn't know where do print's coming from. You have to say myself, my own object. I want you to reference your own code and look for a method called do print and then fire that. Okay, and in this case, we're going to send the message and then the color magenta. Now, what this is doing is magenta being kind of a purplish red. That is the color that we're defining. So colored actually is a cool little module that lets you print out a message in any color you want. This could be red, blue, any of the ones that are supported by the colored object. Okay? So that's great and wonderful. Now we're going to be let's use this. Okay, so we'll say copy up here, and let's look for a print object right there. Okay, let's say console.magenta. And so now what we're doing is we're actually calling that that console that we imported, and we're calling the method magenta, right? And that's one way. I do things a little different, but for right now that'll work. We'll probably leave it at this point. So that's just simply going to add some color. So if we run this program again, now we see we have it in nice magenta. Okay, and you can do this for more, right? So we'll go back to our console, and we're going to copy and paste a bunch Okay, and we're just, my wife is cackling like a hen. She is watching this anime, and it is so funny to her. And I would love to be in there. I love anime, but I am stuck in here coding her program. Um, and that's, if you're not married yet, that is the perfect definition of marriage right there. Um, anyway, so we're going to be making a few colors in here, and you can make a lot of colors, obviously. I'll probably stop after this one. So now we just simply uh, change these, right, to different colors. Um, and there's a reason I'm doing this for you guys, because I could just copy and paste what I already have, but you should do this on your own so that you can keep this console and you can pull it into every project you work on. And by doing that, you're reutilizing your code. So you now are creating your own console. We're going to call it a library or a module that allows you to do the same thing without having to ever type it again. You can reuse this code over and over for every project you work on. So whenever you work on a project and you decide, man, I really wish I had a splash of color, you can just import this console. Just simply copy it over, right? And then up here, you're going to simply say from wherever you put it, import console, and boom, you instantly have access to it. So because we have access to it now, we're going to I'm going to make some things here. We're going to say console.red, right? Because this is kind of an error kind of thing. Okay. Now, that'll work because console's already been called up here. You can't do that over here because without being able to import colored, it's not going to work. So it'll just default to a single print. But here it's going to say, it can't do that in console red. So creating a cache directory, we don't have any prints in there, and all we're doing is looking for print statements at this point. We have a print statement, which is an error, so we'll say red to make it an error. Save file, same thing, console.red, okay, is even, doesn't have one, downloading data. So now we have two things, right? So we could say console dot let's do cyan. Why not? Her favorite color is blue. This is another error, so we'll throw another error there. And then these, because they called the original, they're not going to need anything. Generate the file name, shouldn't have anything. Check cache, shouldn't. Generating the table. So now, I think everything is ready to roll. Yeah. So just doing that, we're going to have a new splash of color. And let's delete some of these GIFs so that we can see it download new ones. And we'll run our program. And there we go. Cool, huh? So that's how we've added some color to our terminal. And that's all well and good. Let's also do something else. Let's do a new function at the very top, and we're going to call this print intro. And I'm going to show you how you can do some text generation quickly inside Python. Intro equals nothing for now. Intro plus equals, and in this case we're going to say that times 75. So it's going to actually type 75 of these across the top, and we're going to do it twice. And then intro plus equals again, and we'll say welcome to the student barcode. You know what? Student barcode generator. It's the innator. we also need to add a new line to these because it's one giant string. So we're going to just add some new lines real quick to those. That /n, you'll notice it's colored differently. That's letting you know that it is a new line. In Linux, it's this. In Windows, it's both. Sometimes. Sometimes not. It just depends if you're inside PowerShell or whatever. But anyway, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to say console dot, what color should we make this? Yellow? Sure, we'll make it yellow. Intro. Okay. Let's clear. And before we run anything, let's grab this print intro. And the very beginning of our page, or our thing, we're going to call that. And so let's make this a little bigger so we can see the whole thing. There we go. So welcome to the student barcode generator. But that needs to be moved over a little bit. It really does. So let's move it over a little bit more. And how do you do that? Well, we're going to put in tabs. So /t/t/t. 3 of them should be enough, I think. That loaded console module, let's get rid of that. That's not really needed. We can get rid of that entirely. And now we'll clear. And there we go. Okay, maybe one less tab. Maybe one less tab. This is where OCD kicks in for most people. Run it again, and that's close enough to center. And there you go. You have a simple introduction thing that just basically says, hey, welcome to the things. It's cool, and I've downloaded the new that, and I'm using the cache barcode for those IDs. And if you wanted, you could even get really fancy in here, and you can say, down here, you can say console dot cyan, generated HTML for printing. And you can just keep adding more and more with that console, and just kind of keep, you can even say, like another one down here, down at the very bottom right here above that, you can say launching default browser dots, right? And you can have lots of fun with it. Probably could have started with this, but it introduces some more concepts to you guys. So we're wrapping up now. We've got a very nice, pretty thing built. It's functional. It does what we need it to do. Our HTML has been loading on the other end. I just haven't been showing you that it's over here. At this point, I think my wife's going to have some little critiques of making, colors and whatnot in here to let her know what color sheet to use. But that's all things that are specific to the client themselves, not to the program as a whole. So now you have a fully functional Python project that we have built from scratch. Let's see, we've done 8 videos, 30 minutes apiece, 3 hours? 3 hours of my life. But that's coding. That's how long it takes typically to throw something together from scratch. And I think we've done a pretty good job of what we built. Later on, we'll be doing some more things. I'll be doing some more videos with some more automation stuff. Like I said, I have a plan on that. That's going to be using some security stuff because that's what I do for my living, is I'm a cybersecurity guy. So I'm going to be making some tools that do automation of tools that I use in the field so that we can, you can attack your own systems and kind of scan your own systems. And Python's very nice for all of that stuff. It's really nice. In that, we'll also cover logging because we'll need logs. We'll talk about grabbing data from launch. We'll learn how to launch programs in the background. We'll talk about threading, which is the big thing, running 2 or 3 processes at once. We'll also maybe even give it a terminal-like interface where you can type things and do stuff like that. So, and we'll probably do some arg parsing as well. I could spend years talking about Python. I love it that much. It's got a lot of stuff that it can do, and there's a lot of things that you may or may not be able to pull from. But I'll be using this as a good avenue for us to kind of, not only will I be teaching you guys how to build the projects that I'm building, but also teaching you code along the way. And as long as these get some good feedback from people, then I'll continue to make them. And we're at the 30-minute mark. So I hope you guys have learned something. I hope you've enjoyed this journey. I'll be doing some more later on. Thank you.